Let's move on to exercise 3.5L now. In this exercise, we will continue using the same example as well as the same Excel sheet and same form. However, we will actually be creating a new flowchart because we will be extracting the data from the Excel sheet without opening it. So the process and the way that the data is extracted is quite different. Therefore, it is better to start on a new flowchart entirely. So let's go to our UiPath, and we have this exercise 3.4L. We do not want to create a new script using this as a base. Instead, we want to use new flowchart, exercise 3.5L, and create. That gives us that new flowchart that we are looking for. Again, we first open the browser. So we double click into the open browser and look for the URL address and put it into quotes here. Do make sure to select the correct browser, which is Chrome. Next, you want to search for a read range activity. So please make sure that you select the one that is under Workbook and not Excel. Link it to your open browser, and you can also double click to change the parameters. Look for the folder where you have stored your exercise space 3L, copy out the address, and put it into quotes. Do remember to put into quotes, exercise 3L.xlsx, sheet 2, not sheet 1, and we want to select the entire range, so therefore delete away A1 colon A2. So that pulls out what we require to access the Excel sheet. Let's now create a variable and name it data table 1 with a type that matches what we want, which is the system data table. Inside your read range, do remember to output the data into data table 1, which you can select from here.
So now you have a variable called data table 1. If in the past a variable could only hold a single value, a data table now can hold many values. You can think of it like a variable is just one cell in the Excel sheet, and the data table is like the entire Excel sheet. So for the next step, let's go back out, and what we need is a activity called for each row, and you can link it to your read range. Double click and enter it, and for each row in data table 1. So now we are saying that for each row inside the data table that you have declared, we want to do something. So if we go to your original file, so we want to make sure that for every row, for row 2 do the same thing, for row 3 do the same thing, for row 4 do the same thing. So next step is to start putting in the values. So now the next step is then to get your row item. So in other words, what we require is we want to pull out the information from the data table and put them into a variable. And here we also need to declare the relevant variables. So in our case, we need to declare item, number, price, and include as always. And we need multiple get row items since there are values for each of these. So now it's time to input the parameters for each of these get row items. So one thing to note is that row is actually this row that you see on my screen. This row is actually a name of a variable, and this object contains a single row in the data table or in the Excel that you saw previously. So for each of these get row item, the first input that we want to use is row because it contains what we want to extract in that particular row. So we put row into all four of these get row item. So let's go back to the very top get row item, and under column name, if we go to our Excel, we realize that the first column has the name item. So under column name, in inverted commas, we put in item so that they can locate this particular column. And where do we output the value into? We want to output into the variable, so item here as well. So let's do the same for the rest. So that helps us to settle all the values, and now all our variables are populated with the correct values. And for the next step, we need to start putting the values into our Google Sheet. So let's open up a Google Sheet that you have. So this order list tool that we previously used. And what we want to do is we want to type into. So drag a type into here. And given that we have 4 values, so we need 4 type into, or rather 3, because the last one is an if statement. So the very first one, let's indicate on screen for item. And here we put in item, which is the value. Next one is number, and we have number here. And the last one we have price, and of course we have price here. Okay, so we are into our home stretch. So we add a click activity after the price input. So if we indicate on screen, or rather we need to first scroll it down. When we first indicate on screen, so we need to click on that arrow, which we usually do. And lastly, we need to add an if statement. So this one would be include dot contains bracket yes. So this means that if the include variable contains yes, then what we want to do is put in a click, indicate on screen. Before that, we need to open up this again, indicate on screen yes, and another click on the else side, indicate on screen no. Last two steps, we just want to make sure that we click the submit button. Click the submit button. Let's just do this again to make sure it's okay. So indicate on screen, submit button. Let's just get through this first. And we want the click on to submit another response. So that brings us to the end of the exercise. And now we want to test it out. So to test it out, please make sure that you have closed your Excel sheet. Please close your Excel sheet before testing, and close any order list tool you might have open. So let's close everything and click play. So as we can tell, this works perfectly, and please proceed to the next video where we will conclude this lecture lesson. Thank you.